ChatGPT said, "Welcome back to Trending Now USA, and I'm Bella." Today's developing story is one the tennis world did not expect to explode. But here we are, and the internet is on fire. The rumors, the tension, the stares across the locker room, the unspoken shade during press conferences, everything appears to be pointing to something much bigger than a simple competitive relationship. The question echoing across social media right now is simple but loaded. Was Elena Rybakina exposed? And is there a real rivalry brewing between her and Aryna Sabalenka that has been kept behind the scenes? As new information circulates, fans are split. Some say the rivalry is natural. Two of the most dominant athletes in women's tennis are bound to clash. But others are convinced there is something deeper, comments that don't match the public smiles, body language that tells a different story, and a growing sense that this dynamic is shifting from professional to personal. Over the past season, both Sabalenka and Rybakina have become central figures of a new era in women's tennis. Power hitters, fierce competitors, and athletes whose presence alone can change the momentum of a match. But this rise hasn't been calm or unified. Instead, it's been marked with subtle moments that fans, analysts, and even fellow athletes are beginning to point to as possible proof of a rivalry brewing beneath the polished PR messages. To understand why this story is suddenly exploding, we have to rewind back to tournaments, statements, match reactions, and even training sessions where things didn't seem as lighthearted as the cameras tried to capture. Many tennis followers remember the early phase, when Rybakina's Wimbledon title seemed to catch everyone by surprise. She wasn't the expected champion at the time, but the win was undeniable, precise, and commanding. She arrived with quiet power, no theatrics, no screaming roars, just calculated dominance. And suddenly, Elena Rybakina became impossible to ignore. Aryna Sabalenka, on the other hand, had spent years climbing the rankings with a completely different demeanor: intense, fiery, emotional, explosive. Her style of tennis and personality couldn't be more opposite from Rybakina's cool, composed presence. To casual audiences, this contrast looked refreshing. But to insiders, it looked like a collision course. As the two began meeting more frequently in high-stakes matches, the tension slowly grew. Not through words, but expressions, reactions, and what fans now call the silence rivalry. Every handshake, every trophy ceremony, every press comment began to carry weight. Then came the turning point, a moment many point to as the true beginning of this rumored divide. After one particularly intense matchup that left the crowd electrified, Sabalenka made a comment in a press interview that sounded casual, but replaying it now, it feels layered. She said she respected Rybakina as a player, but added that some players don't show emotion because they don't feel pressure the same way others do. Some interpreted that as harmless. Others claim it was the first public hint of frustration, suggesting Rybakina's calm demeanor wasn't confidence, but detachment. Weeks later, when Rybakina was asked a similar question, her response was smooth, polite, and almost too controlled. She acknowledged Sabalenka as a talented player, but added she didn't worry about what other players feel or say because the focus must remain on performance, not reaction. To the untrained ear, that sounds respectful. To rivalry detectives online, that was a chess move. Soon, every interaction between the two became dissected frame by frame. Whether they avoided eye contact, whether Sabalenka clapped late during trophy ceremonies, whether Rybakina intentionally stayed distant during group photos, fans wanted answers. And then this season delivered fuel to the fire. A series of tournaments put Rybakina and Sabalenka on nearly parallel tracks, forcing the tennis world to compare every statistic, every serve speed, every mental game breakdown. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't about two strong athletes. It was about who would outlast the other. Some insiders claim the tension isn't just emotional, it's strategic. Both athletes want to be seen as the face of the new WTA era. Both want the spotlight, the sponsorships, the energy of being the one everyone watches. Over time, reports began emerging that even warm-up courts had an atmosphere thick enough to feel. Journalists have noted moments where neither player acknowledges the other despite being only a few feet apart. Coaches and staff allegedly avoid positioning both teams in close proximity, possibly to avoid awkwardness or conflict. But the biggest spike in speculation came after a recent practice session where cameras captured what many call the stare moment. Sabalenka watched Rybakina training, expression unreadable, some say annoyed, others say analyzing. But what shook fans was Rybakina's response. She never once looked back. Some interpret that lack of response as confidence. Others call it disrespect. Social media platforms exploded with slow-motion breakdowns of that moment. Comment sections filled with theories. Rybakina knows Sabalenka wants to beat her mentally. Sabalenka feels threatened because Rybakina represents the style of tennis that beats her. No one wants to say it, but they don't like each other. And then another twist. A reporter asked Sabalenka directly whether she considered Rybakina a rival. Instead of giving the usual diplomatic sports answer like, "Everyone at this level is a rival," Sabalenka paused, smiled slightly, and said, "Let's just say, playing her always means something." That statement alone unleashed an avalanche of interpretations. Some claimed it was playful. Others swore Sabalenka's tone implied something personal. Meanwhile, when Rybakina was asked a similar question later in the week, her answer was short. "I don't see rivalries. I see matches." Once again, polite, controlled, and perfectly vague. But now the question isn't whether this rivalry exists. The question is, why hide it? Some analysts suggest it may be a branding decision. The WTA has been working to highlight unity and mutual respect among its stars, promoting athletes as role models and ambassadors rather than bitter opponents. A public feud would conflict with that polished image. But fans? Fans love rivalry. Rivalry builds drama, storylines, and unforgettable matches. Historically, sports thrive when competition becomes personal. Serena versus Sharapova. Federer versus Nadal. Djokovic versus everyone at some point. If Sabalenka and Rybakina truly are building the next great tennis rivalry, fans want it acknowledged. Another part of the speculation centers around psychological warfare. Some believe Rybakina's calm persona frustrates Sabalenka, not because Sabalenka dislikes her, but because it disrupts her rhythm. Sabalenka thrives on intensity, emotion, and adrenaline. Facing a competitor who reacts like stone can be mentally destabilizing. Meanwhile, others argue Rybakina does feel the rivalry, she just expresses it differently. Her silence becomes strategy. Her calm becomes control. Her emotionless responses become a message. You cannot shake me. Still, there's another layer, one the tennis world isn't ignoring: respect. Despite the speculation, there is undeniable respect between the two. Their matches are powerful, dramatic, and often unpredictable. Both push each other to extraordinary levels, producing some of the most unforgettable finals of the last several seasons. And that's where the truth becomes complicated. Are Sabalenka and Rybakina rivals? Absolutely. Are they enemies? Not necessarily. This might not be a scandal, it might be evolution. Two players at the height of their game fighting for dominance don't need to be friendly. The court isn't built for friendship, it's built for victory. But the mystery lies in the fact that both women refuse to define their relationship publicly. That silence is what turns normal competitive energy into something bigger, something fans are left to decode. As headlines grow louder and commentary picks apart every micro-expression, one thing becomes clear. This rivalry, whether spoken or not, will define a chapter in modern tennis. Whether the tension is personal, psychological, or simply competitive, the impact is undeniable. Their matches carry weight. Their presence shifts energy. Their names together spark anticipation. So the real question isn't whether Elena Rybakina has been exposed. The real question is, exposed as what? A rival? A threat? A silent strategist? A player who refuses to be rattled? Or maybe, just maybe, the future number one whose quiet confidence speaks louder than Sabalenka's roar. Because sometimes the most powerful statement is saying nothing at all. And as this story develops, one thing is certain: every match, Every trophy ceremony, every comment will be watched with sharper eyes. Not just for the tennis, but for the tension. I'm Bella, and this is Trending Now USA. Stay tuned, because this rivalry is just getting started.